Hello everybody, I'm Arden. Welcome to another episode of Minecraft Enigmatica 2 Expert. Today we are sitting in a brand spanking new compact machine to start on the actual endgame for Enigmatica. And we're going to start on the ugliest part of it because this part can take a long time to process and a long time to properly set up. And by that I mean the quantum compressor, which is used to make all of the singularities for all of the extended crafting nonsense in the end game. These are used in a bunch of really nasty recipes that are heavily used throughout the end game process to make a whole bunch of different things. And you might think that looks pretty innocuous because the other recipes look so much worse. But if you're not familiar with what the singularities are, well, you pump a whole bunch of a single type of item into a quantum compressor to create the singularity. And by a whole bunch, I mean 10,000. And a whole bunch of power. It uses up 1 billion at 1 million a tick. So that's not an insignificant hurdle. To do prep work for this episode, I actually went and made a couple more environmental tech solar panels in the end, which is enough to basically run one of these machines at a time. But we need to at least get the infrastructure started and get some of these singularities cooking. And since I am not all that familiar with how these work or the throughput we need to be able to handle these, I'm going to start with the very first and easiest one, which is just the coal singularity I just showed you. Because some of these are going to actually be serious problems, because the coal one is just blocks of coal that we can cook up from coal essence from mystical agriculture, which we can make in a cloche pretty easily and then compact it and turn it into blocks and then feed these directly into this. So that's the initial plan, to see how fast we can make these, or at least get these cooking over time. But some of these other singularities are gonna be problems. Like the titanium one's a good example, because you need titanium ingots, but there's no way to fabricate them. You can only mine them. So some of these are going to be a serious problem until I can actually make RF Tools dimensions to actually just go get the blocks directly from them in large quantities. But until then, we can at least get the easier ones started. So let's talk about the quantum compressor for a minute. It's actually not that hard to make at the point of the game we're at. It uses the advanced crafting table, not the elite or ultimate, and it mostly just needs a ton of pistons, including some industrial craft compressors, some blocks of black iron, which we already make, and the auto compressor. But there is one catch, because it requires the elite compressing factory. And the problem with that is to upgrade it to a factory requires using installer cards on it. And that makes it hard to automate. We can probably do it with autonomous activators of some sort, but realistically we only need a smallish number of these. I think it's like 27 or 28 total if we even want them all running concurrently. So I'm just going to do that step manually and not go through the exercise of setting up redstone clocks and whatnot to automate it, because that just sounds like more work than it's actually worth versus just, chugging out all 28 of them all at once. That said, there is something I haven't talked about. When I was sick a month or so back and wasn't able to really record or do much for a while, I actually automated the whole piston making process, and you can see I have 33,000 in here right now. And to do that, I shoved a whole bunch of machines back here where I used to have my diesel generators. Back here, I have the treated wood process where I'm sawmilling a bunch of birch that is now coming out of my tree farm. I replaced all the other trees that were there with that, because birch can make rosin in a fraction still out of resin, and oak cannot. And then that gets pumped into this fluid crafter, which takes all the birch and combines it with the creosote buckets to create treated wood. Because let's not forget that the piston recipe is kind of a giant pain in this pack. It's not the normal one. It does require treated wood. From there, we go into this compactor to create the iron plates that are needed to then create the pistons here in this crafter. Now, I have all of this turned off right now because I've got plenty and I actually need treated wood more than anything. So I've just got it making treated wood at this point because I've got 33,000 pistons, which is enough for a while. So let's talk a little bit about what we need to do, because we need to pass 10,000 items into this to be able to make a singularity, and you don't want it going slow. The first thing I attempted to do was use cloches, which could work, but on this scale, it's never going to finish. Because going to the compressor, you can see that it's made 20 so far over the relatively small amount of time that it's been running, which is nothing. Up here, you can see that I have 2 plants going to the cloche. One is the coal seed, creating the coal essences, which go into the crafter to make it into coal, and then blocks of coal, which is not a fast process. And the other are skeleton seeds to make bone, which gets tossed into the pulverizer to make bone meal, to fertilize the cloches. If we look inside the cloche, you can see that it has a fertilizer amount and a growth modifier of 2.5. Now, be aware there are better fertilizers. There's the fertilizer from forestry made out of apatite, and there's also fluxed phytogrow. Both are a bit harder to make, although not much harder, honestly. But it's not going to speed up the growth rate significantly enough to do this. So what we could do is we could spam out a ton of cloches on this like I did in my hamster farm to make a single item, but then we would need walls upon walls upon walls, and it'll start looking like my hamster grid, which we could do that. But that seems tedious. Instead, what we might want to try to do is figure out how to make an instant growing farm of these and then harvest them somehow very, very quickly. I'm not sure if we actually have the tools to do that in this pack still, I'm going to be honest. If you watch older videos about this, or you see people talking about it on like Reddit and whatnot, they'll say to use greenhouse glass. That loophole has been filled at the point where I'm doing this. That was an exploit that does not exist anymore. So I'm probably going to try growth accelerators, and we might try a couple other things to speed it up. I'm not sure if we're going to get there. I might have to take it out of this box and, I don't know, spam a bunch of growth accelerators up to like 64 high or something to try to do this. I don't know yet. We're going to have to experiment a little bit though. But I'm going to try to avoid using the cloches. Alright, so I went a long ways away from my base. I went to the desert I normally go to when I need sand or something in a desert. Put a full stack of growth accelerators, a bank of sprinklers, a bank of rustic apiaries, which these aren't full of bees yet, so if they are going, it's not full speed. And while this isn't an instant tick, it's pretty close. Because yeah, sometimes you get a little bit of lag. So now I need to find a way to reasonably harvest these and set these up and then make a ton of these. I probably need to go automate making mana diamonds now though, because these each use one. But this at least appears to be decent. Going to be a huge lag factory though once it gets going. I forgot the one thing I even came out here for, which was to add greenhouse glass, which is why it's here. Alright, say hello to my giant lag monster, or at least it will be when we get this operational. For now, this is what I've decided to go on, and I had a big brainwave vote when I started this. Felt like I needed to make a design that was horizontally tileable so I could fill up the chunk. And then I was like, wow, I need a ton of fertilizers or things that can do growth acceleration. And then I was like, well, the growth acceleration blocks will work. And then I realized I have a massive bottleneck for mana, which is a problem we're gonna have to solve at some point, you know, later, but not right now. But then I remembered that the growth accelerators work vertically. Like they will work on anything that's above them. So I realized I could stack this vertically. So that's what you're seeing going on here. There's one row here that I'm standing on. There's another row above it that I'm slowly building out. Under it's the coal. The bottom row there is the coal. The top row is going to the iron. It's opened up so you can see how it's going, what's going on, and how fast it's working. I ripped out the sprinklers. I ripped out the greenhouse glass. I have no idea if either of those are working. I just replaced them with rustic apiaries, tons of them, and filled them back up with bees. I actually don't know if they're actually working with the growth accelerators, but it can't hurt to put them in here because I don't actually need water because I'm using the fertile soil. So it appears to be going really, really fast, nearly instantaneously now, which is why we're using autonomous users down there to do this, because they're on a 1-tick delay. They can pull these really, really fast versus all the other harvesters, which even if you have them restricted to a single block, are slower than this. So you might want to automate these sooner than later. You could potentially also use the mechanical user or the integrated dynamics version, the world interactor or whatever it's called, I can't remember. So this is going very, very fast now. Now what I need to do is build out a bunch more layers and cover all of the basic singularities. Now, I will say that a lot of people go straight to a loophole and they beeline straight to the creative fluid tank, which is still quite a bit out of our means right now because there's some things that we can't do, mostly the awakened cores and the chaotic core from Draconic Evolution. Because once you have that, you can melt down any ingot you want, put that liquid into the creative tank, connect that to a gigantic barrel, fill up the barrel very, very quickly with actually additions to liquid lasers like I do when I'm making brine and lithium, and then dump out a near infinite amount of that ingot through a smeltery. It's very, very quick with Tinker's IO stuff and pipes. So that's great. But I want to have the singularities cooking before we're at that point because we're still not quite there. Because the basic singularities, not the extended ones, not these harder ones that don't come from seeds, are all used in the Infinity Catalyst. Do we need a lot more of these than we do the ultimate singularity, which does require them all. So I figured we need a ton of these, we might as well just get it cooking now. And at the point where we can finally replace it with a tank, well, we can just rip all of this down. Easy peasy, no real worries. But I am probably gonna have to start ripping out all of the other unused systems in my base, like the hamster farm, unfortunately, to start reducing lag, because I'm already feeling it pretty bad sometimes when I fire up the A2 system. So that's not great. So let me fill this in and then let's go take a look at what I want to do next. All right, back in my quantum machine box. And the fun part is I've almost completely cooked my first singularity already while setting this whole thing up. So that's kind of fun. I probably should try to figure out the current timing on my stuff to figure out how it goes. But when I did the math initially, it was coming out to be about 2 blocks a second. So it's about an hour to build one of these. But I think it's actually less now because I wasn't using a full row of coal and I still don't have all the growth accelerators in. So we'll see how it goes. And I should point out there's one other thing these things can and need to do to progress the pack. And that's combine a whole bunch of pistons to make the matter condenser from Applied Energistics, which is primarily used to make the singularity, which basically works the same way. You pump a bunch of items into it to get the singularity, tons of them. But we'll get to that in a little bit. All right, so I just set this up in a really basic fashion. You can see that it's cooking the thing on top. You can't see the singularities on the other one because I've got the pipes on top. You would be able to if I did. And in this case, I just have a simple ME export bus piping directly into it, sending in pistons, and it's completely accelerated. So as you can see, it's filling up very quickly. Once this finishes, we'll just shut this off because I don't need more than one, and then I can just eject any pistons still in the system. It does need an elite compressing factor, similar just to making the quantum compressors to begin with. And here we go, I think. So let's turn that off. Wow, this cooks slow. All right, that took a little bit, but now we have our matter condenser. And it doesn't use up the catalyst. And now we can inject out all of these. All right, so the suggested method for this is to just pipe water directly from the sink into the matter condenser. And I think that's what we're gonna do. There's an alternate method where you can pump it into a chisel and bits tank and use the chisel bit pieces to make it go even faster, but I don't think we need to do that. But we need to talk about the sink for a minute, because it's basically the single fastest water source in the game that anybody really uses. And they gated it and made it really hard to make in this pack because of that. It didn't used to be, but it is now. Because it requires a theoretical infinite water source, which requires not too hard to make water essence at least. A big, huge, dense, infinite water source, which is hard to do without automation, and then ultimate mechanical pipes, which requires progress into mechanism. Not super endgame depth, but it is gated. But the important part is this thing generates super fast. Like if we take this out, you can see it fills up almost immediately. It does also require a 64K ME storage component to do this. It's basically, this is its catalyst. But we can make as much as we want. I could go fill up a chest pretty easy, and I think that's what I'm gonna go do. Now, I don't actually know how many of these we need. Be aware its main use does not easily show up in JEI. This is all that shows up if you right click on it. It's just these two, which doesn't appear to be useful. But what it's actually used for are these quantum entangled singularities, which tells you if you just drop it next to an enderdust and explode it, it makes 2 of these that are paired together, which we need a ton of because it makes anglicite, which is used all over the advanced crafting. But given how fast we can make it, I think a crate's worth would be probably fine for now, and we can just turn it off and not worry about it for a while. Okay, so I added some storage. I ripped out the matter condenser because I've got thousands upon thousands of these singularities now, and I put a storage bus on the drawer to put it into our system so that this is now accessible to our network as these build up. Now, all I need to do is slowly add on to this over time as I can make more growth accelerators and build out that farm to get these going. I do want to note one thing in particular though. The Certus Quartz Singularity is one you want to make sooner than later, because while there is a mystical agriculture recipe for this, you cannot use a creative tank or any other real creative means other than the drawer, which is the very last thing you make, to do this. So that you want to make this as soon as possible to get this cooking immediately, because you need tons of these and there's no easy way to get it. So that's the next row I'm going to be adding to my farm. But we need to go add all of the other easy ones as well and start filling up all these chests and just let it cook over time, because we still have a long road ahead of us and we might as well get ahead of the game. Anyhow, if you found this episode interesting and entertaining, please consider leaving a like, and if you're new, subscribing. As always, I'm Ard. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.